Magic mirror on the wall. Who's the fairest one of all? Today we're going to be making these magnificent Disney apples that look like your favorite characters and are dipped into a dreamy caramel and coated in chocolate. There's Pumpkin Mickey, Jack Skellington, Maleficent, the Evil Queen, and the Forbidden Poison Apple. So everyone's here, villains and all, just in time for Halloween. So let's whip up the magical potion for the recipe and be sure to keep on watching. Guys, I've tested so many recipes and different techniques to help you achieve the most successful dip without all the troubleshooting. This caramel is made from scratch, yet prepared in the microwave, which is so convenient. So let's get started with our apples. In order for the caramel to stick to the skin, we need to remove the waxy outer layer by cleaning them in very hot water that has been mixed with 1 tablespoon of white vinegar. The water should be very hot but not boiling, and I'm just turning the apples around in the mixture for 10 seconds to completely submerge them. After that, make sure to dry the apples really well with a towel. Also, getting near that stem since water tends to hide in there too. Now that they're squeaky clean, I'm removing the stem by giving it a twist, and storing the apples in the fridge for an hour. It is key for the apples to be cold, so this is where the apples are going to hang out for most of this video. Next, it is time to insert some wooden candy apple sticks by piercing the center and hammering straight down into the core with a mallet. I will be sure to link these sticks and all of the materials in the description box below. And once the sticks are secure, you will notice the juice from the apple may have escaped, so give all your apples another good dry once more and place them back in the fridge while we make our delicious caramel. To prevent any caramel from overflowing, I recommend to use a tall measuring cup and to add in 1 stick of melted butter that has been slightly cooled, as well as half of a cup of light brown sugar, half of a cup of granulated sugar, a pinch of salt, half of a cup of light corn syrup, and half of a cup of sweetened condensed milk. When mixing, it is important to thoroughly combine the butter and brown sugar, otherwise the caramel separates and becomes grainy, so scrape the bottom and sides with a rubber spatula to give it a good mix. We are all set to pop this in the microwave for 2 minutes, and once that's done, you need to stir the caramel while also scraping around the sides to ensure it doesn't crystallize. And all you need to do is repeat the same process 2 more times of microwaving for 2 minutes and stirring the caramel. After the last round in the microwave, the caramel will slightly bubble, but depending on your microwave, it may or may not be ready yet, but oh, does it look delicious! Just to be sure, I'm checking where the temperature is at with an infrared food thermometer, and it is at 221 right now, but caramel needs to be at the softball stage, which is between 240 to 245. So if it's not quite there yet, heat in 30-second intervals and check until the temperature is in that range. The last step is to pour in 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract, and our super easy caramel is all done and ready for dipping. My tips and tricks are to angle the measuring cup to let the caramel pool up in the corner, and when you swirl the apple around, leave some of the skin peeking out. Since we are double dipping these in chocolate, the caramel can ooze out if covered all the way to the top, and we want the chocolate to seal over the caramel, if that makes sense. I prefer not to shake them around too much either. Just let them drip and wipe the excess caramel off the bottom. I find shaking them too much can form more air bubbles. You will definitely love dipping in this caramel. The texture sets to perfection without being too gooey. And no worries if there are some air bubbles in there, it does happen even with your best dips. What you can do is after it sets, put on a pair of gloves and gently press down, then buff it out with circular motions to smooth the surface right out. For our poison apple, I prepared another batch of the caramel and colored it with red gel food coloring, then went ahead and dipped more apples in there using the same method. Something about the red caramel is so enchanting and magical, like Snow White. All of the apples look so beautiful. Right before doing that second dip in the chocolate, allow them to set on the counter for an hour, and in the meantime, get a head start on melting the chocolate. These are the Merkin's melting wafers in super white that I'm microwaving for 30 seconds and stirring in between. Then continue in 10-second intervals until it has reached a smooth and fluid consistency without any clumps. For the pumpkin Mickey apple, you will need orange candy coloring. This one is the Color Mill in the shade orange. If you are not familiar with coloring chocolate, it is much better to color white chocolate with an oil-based candy coloring. The pre-colored chocolates are too clumpy for dipping, and the technique is to mix in a little at a time until you reach your desired shade, like this pumpkin orange. To create Mickey's ears, you are going to take 2 regular-sized marshmallows and cut a small amount off the bottom of each one. How cute are these ears? And just stick them right on top of the caramel apple. I prefer to use a deeper dipping container for this. Mine is actually a noodle bowl. And dip straight down into the orange chocolate, then rock side to side to completely cover the ears. As you can see, the double dip on this came out so smooth. My guide for this result, which I can't stress enough, is to thin out your chocolate with the method that you prefer and to dip at 84 degrees. Some options are Paramount Crystals or Crisco, whichever you prefer. Otherwise, you will end up with this bumpy surface known as elephant skin. Let's try this again. After thinning out my chocolate, you will surely spot the difference a mile away. It is absolutely essential for dipping over that caramel. Here, I'm also coloring black chocolate for Maleficent and the Evil Queen by melting the Merkin's dark chocolate wafers and mixing in Chef Master black candy coloring a little at a time until it is jet black. It looked like a lot of chocolate, but you are definitely going to need it to dip Maleficent. And I also suggest to place the chocolate into a deep oval-shaped bowl. Once your chocolate looks like this, we are going to start making our horns, and they're actually made of Rice Krispie treats. So I'm melting 4 tablespoons of butter on low heat and dumping in 1 10-ounce package of mini marshmallows, stirring those together continuously to form a gooey marshmallow sauce. And I'm adding in 6 cups of Rice Krispie cereal, half at a time, to coat the marshmallow with the cereal. If you're wondering, homemade Rice Krispie treats not only taste better, but the squares are thicker and more dense to support the shape of the horns. Just press that into a 9x9 pan for those thick squares and let it set for 4 hours. The funniest part about this is we are taking a mustache cookie cutter to cut out the shape for the horns, and Rice Krispie treats can be a bit stubborn to work with, so feel free to trim around the cutter with a knife if you need. It's going to be a little sticky. Gently press down to remove the Rice Krispie treat from the cutter and make a cut down the middle, and also slice about 1 inch off of each end. There we have Maleficent's pair of evil horns. To firmly attach them to the apple, dip the horn into black chocolate and hold in place for about 15 to 20 seconds before letting go. Now that the horns are on, I'm dipping the entire apple in black chocolate that has been thinned out. It looks tricky, but you can do it. I'm just wiggling from side to side to coat the horns and flipping over to the other side. Oops, I got a lot of chocolate on my stick here, so if that happens to you too, you can slip on some straw covers to clean up the look. All of our apples are finally dipped, and we can dress the characters up and bring them to life. My favorite tool to decorate the fine facial features with is a royal icing mix. The only other ingredient required is 1/3 cup of warm water for 1 package of the mix, and I'm beating that together until stiff peaks form. The reason I like royal icing is because it is very smooth to pipe with, and you have so much more control than piping with chocolate, which can appear very bumpy. Once those stiff peaks have formed, I divided up the icing into 3 bowls and colored them violet, black, and brown with gel-based food coloring. And first, I took the brown icing to pipe a pumpkin face on the Mickey apple with the decorating tip number 3 by outlining 3 triangles for the eyes and nose, and completed the mouth with the classic jack-o'-lantern grin, remembering the 2 small cutouts on the top and bottom. I let the outline dry for a bit and loosen the consistency of the icing with a tiny amount of water. This is also called a flooding consistency icing, and I'm dabbing it inside of the outline with a paintbrush and pushing it around to fill everything in. I believe it is very important as a treat maker to expand your skills with different mediums such as the royal icing and to develop more experience. Once you are done flooding the outline and it dries, you can choose to cover the apple in orange sanding sugar. I'll insert a photo of an actual pumpkin Mickey apple from Disney parks with the sanding sugar. And to do that, you could spread dab and hold adhesive on the apple and sprinkle the sugar on. I just thought he looked really cute without it too, so I decided to leave him plain. For Jack Skellington, I sketched his eyes on with a non-toxic pencil before doing the outline with the black icing and a tip number 2. Sketching is a great guide if you don't feel comfortable with freehanding on the apple. And next, I piped 2 angled lines above his eyes for his eyebrows and 2 jelly bean shapes as his nostrils just so he could breathe. And his smile is very wide, so I start from the end of the left eye and finish at the center and create the opening for his mouth. When the outline has dried, I went back in with the flood consistency icing that has a few drops of water in there, using small amounts to fill in those narrow areas. And don't forget the stitches on his mouth with several short lines piped with a tip number 3. Who's ready for Maleficent? Here I have a bright green colored fondant that I rolled out and cut with a heart-shaped cookie cutter. To stick that on, I'm applying a thin layer of dab and hold adhesive, brushing it on the back of the fondant. Less is more. This is similar to a glue. And I press it on to the center of her face, being sure to smooth it out. With the violet icing, I piped 3 horizontal lines on her horns with a tip number 3, and immediately after piping, I sprinkled purple sanding sugar on, otherwise it won't stick to the icing. It adds that dark, mystical vibe and brings the whole look together. Right below the horns, I piped an upside down V shape with another line in the middle and topped it off with more of that purple sanding sugar. When you are done adding the sugar, go back in with a brush to remove the excess. Last, I made her hairline by outlining the heart shape with a tip number 2, and as I worked my way towards the center, I dragged the icing down and finished the remaining portion of the heart. Finally, for the poison apple, it is very drippy and gooey, so the effect is best accomplished with melted chocolate. This is green color meal mixed with white chocolate melt, and you want to put that into a plastic squeeze bottle and begin piping on the 2 skull eyes, and the nose is a keyhole shape. The fun part is decorating with the cool looking drip design by alternating different lengths around the entire apple. Here is where the texture comes in with the squeeze bottle pipe using an up and down motion to fill in the empty spaces. This design is awesome if you don't like decorating with a lot of supplies, and you can make a bunch for your Halloween party table or a spooky family activity. Last but not least, for the evil queen, I cut yellow fondant with a crown cookie cutter and gently join the ends together and let this dry while I cut the peach colored fondant with the hard cutter, just as we did before for the Maleficent face, and the hairline was outlined with royal icing and a tip number 3. It's time to crown the queen and give the crown a shiny finish by mixing gold edible luster dust and Everclear vodka as an edible paint. If your paint gets too thick, adjust the consistency with a few more drops of the vodka, but it does spread really well overall. You can choose to attach the crown to her head with melted chocolate so it stays in place. I hope you enjoyed making these magical Disney apples with me. If you did, be sure to like and subscribe. It's Christina here. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next spooky video.